What's been the toughest challenge of creating enough, the type of rhythm that you'd like to see in this offense through the first 3 weeks?
Yeah, I think it's, it just comes down to, execution. It's all razor thin in this league, and we're close on so many of these plays on the early downs, and just keep working, keep executing. We know we're just inches away from getting to that rhythm that you're talking about, and had it a little bit against Indianapolis. Obviously, this last game was rough with all the 3 and outs, but we're close. So I think looking at the players we have and the way we're practicing, we feel confident that it's a small sample size. I think by the end of the year we'll be happy.
Joe talks a lot about play sequencing, pass, follow on, the way that fits together. Is that to you? I know you're always looking at that, but what have you sort of made of that so far, or is it really just sort of execution on the early downs?
I think it is mostly execution. If you have a good run and a good pass and run pass sequence looks pretty good, and so it's and I think seeing what happened on first down and then what situation you're in on second down. It's easy to say, hey, we're going to go run here, but if you're 2nd and 11, you might want to get back on track with a high percentage completion. So there's a lot that goes into it, and when plays are working, you feel like you're in a good rhythm, and when they're not, and I don't think there's a secret to the sequencing, or it's just playing well and making the plays, and game planning the right stuff, and once you get that rhythm and things start working, I think you feel good about it, and everyone. Hindsight's always 20/20. Like, oh, we did this and it worked. Let's do it again. And the defense is different every play, so there's a lot that goes into it.
Coach, with the running back rotation, do you believe in a hot hand, or do you kind of have a plan going into the game of how the reps are going to?
I think both. There is a plan. I think as we mature at the running back position, I think we can just kind of rotate them in. And then there's certain plays that we feel JK's maybe plays to his strengths a little bit more. A few plays maybe it plays to RJ's strength a little more, and then plays where, hey, we can just roll them. And I think we're getting to that point where, we can rotate them in, and if someone's seeing the game real well and, like you said, has a hot hand, then maybe you feed him a little bit more. But they're both two really good backs, and you'd like them both to get 20 carries a game. I think that's hard to do, but I think long term, the running back's health, I think it's going to be very beneficial to those guys to be able to split the load like that.
Joe, with Evan looking healthier this week, I think he had like 40% snap share first couple games. Obviously injuries, but that's well below where he was throughout his career. Like, what's the key for you for this offense, kind of getting him integrated and up to speed? What hasn't clicked there so far?
I don't know if there's anything that hasn't clicked. I think. A little bit like the running backs, we got, a bunch of tight ends that we like, and they all do different things well. So, but yeah, I think, we're aware of what that guy's strengths are, and, he'll be getting going here real soon, I think.
What do you, just when you look at what Dobbins has given you, especially getting in the end zone, obviously Asst just through his first few games in short time?
Yeah, I think, first he brings a lot of energy to the offense. He's a intense guy who plays hard, practices hard, and so I think just that veteran professionalism that he brings, he's and then he's a really good runner, strong, good vision, fast, and everything you want. So been real happy with the way he's been playing.
Coach, on those deep passes, I asked Bo if there was anything he'd do. He's like, look, I'm going to keep missing them, and Sean says before that he wants to keep taking shots. But are there little things to be able to connect?
I thought, there may be 3 of those throws that we had someone behind the defense. I think one, he was kind of had to short arm it because of the pressure. The other 2 I thought were good balls. I mean, they were right off fingertips, and there's so much that goes into that. In that stadium, you look back and there's a glare sometimes, and so maybe the receiver didn't pick the ball up, and so his pacing wasn't quite what he didn't track it as well because of the lighting. I think on that last throw, Cortland got hung up just a little bit releasing, and but I look at those 2 throws on the flea flicker and the one to Cortland. I thought they were good throws, and I mean they're just off fingertips, so I wouldn't overthink those.
Well, then I guess people are not panicked, but nervous that Bo maybe doesn't look where they thought he'd be, but his numbers are better across the board than they were in his first 3 games.
I think he's
last year.
Yeah, I think he's playing well. There's certainly things that he can improve on, but there's certainly no panic in this building.
Obviously, week 1 had a bunch of opportunities to close out the game and did it.
Mm-hmm.
Last 2 obviously have come out field goals. How fine is that line between getting a stop at the end?
Yeah, it's a fine line. Obviously, most of these games the last couple of weeks have been one-score games. I think for us, obviously finishing better is key. Me coaching better in the fourth quarters is key. I think for us, overall, just playing a cleaner and smarter brand of football. The penalties on defense concern me, and they're happening in the biggest moments of the game. So I think part of us finishing is playing a cleaner brand of football for 4 quarters, and some of these games wouldn't even come down to that. But when they do, we have to obviously make the plays to win the games. So that's been a conversation, but it's more about the big picture about playing a cleaner and smarter brand of football for 4 quarters, versus waiting for the last series of the game to make our plays. And we are playing hard. We're playing good football, I think overall, but we're not playing cleaner and we're not playing smart enough football.
When you look on the I know it doesn't come down to one play, but on the touchdown that Herbert threw at the game, how much of that is could your front or Riley have done something different? How much of that is a really good player making a
I think in this league, you see every weekend that the best players make big time plays in crucial moments, and we got to make more of those. Their guy made a play, and we didn't make the play. We had him in the backfield. We got to finish the sack and make the play, obviously, on the scramble. But again, I think those plays are going to happen, in NFL games as far as their best players making plays. My focus is us playing better, cleaner football for 4 quarters, so these games don't come down to one play. It's never one play, right? And right now the penalties are killing us, and it's been 2 weeks of that. So I've got to coach that out of our players.
Coach, how do you coach?
Some of those penalties, like Huff's unnecessary roughness.
Yeah.
Do you have to kind of, walk a fine line because you don't want them to lose their intensity and aggression, but you want them to play clean?
Of course. Absolutely. I think it's 2 kind of penalties. It's penalties that's pre-snap that we don't want ever, okay? And it's aggressive penalties that we can accept from time to time, but when they hurt you, you can't separate them, because it's costing us games right now. So we can't separate those. So we have to, in those moments, play clean football. If they call them, we have to correct them. We have to deal with it, right? And I think, with Huff's penalty, that penalty came from Patrick's first tackle. He drove the guy back 6 yards, and the whistle wasn't blown. The guy runs and, gains 30 more yards. So he finished the guy. So, that's what had happened. But again, if they call it, we have to correct it, we have to acknowledge it, and we have to move on past it.
How do you coach that play that happened with Pat? Because most of the time it seems like the whistle's blown. Mm-hmm. You just tell them to keep them.
I think you play until the whistle's blown, right? And that's got to be an official's issue. When whistle's not blown, right? You got to play through it, and that's what I told Pat. The entire defense finish the plays, and that kind of pushed Huff to finish in the play.
Last year against you guys, Joe Burrow had one of the most amazing, precise pinpoint passing days. He's not here.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get your team to focus to zero in?
Yeah.
Even though Joe's not there.
Yeah. I thought we played pretty well last year also, Mike. 17-17 game. It's a close game. But obviously Joe not there this year, and the team's not different as far as the skill people. I mean, they have great skill. They've got 2 receivers that are top 10 or 12 in the league. The tight end, 88's a special player. Brown's a special player at the halfback position. So that challenge is still there, Mike. And the guy who's playing for him, he's played in NFL games. He's a veteran player. He can operate, at a high level. He's not Joe Burrow, but the offense is still intact. Those skill guys who can make explosive plays are still intact. So our focus is to keep the explosive players from hurting us and to play cleaner and smarter football.
Sean was talking about the offense finding its identity, and he feels like they're close. Hope they find it soon. you guys know what your identity is, but you talked about playing the complete 60 minutes. So how close are y'all to being the defense that you think you can be?
I think we're very close. And I go back to this, right? We have to play cleaner and smarter football. You know, we are definitely close to being where we want to be. It's early, obviously. You know, in the first month of the season, you always got to figure out, you know, what you're good at, what your new pieces. You know, everyone's figuring that out, right? So the first month, that's what you want to obviously fix. It's a long season. It's early, you know, and we've played two really good football teams. Two measuring sticks for us, and I feel good about where we are. My focus all week has been to coach and teach a smarter and cleaner brand of football. That's our focus right now. If we can do that, you know, we'll be fine.
Riley, obviously, probably not surprised that he's getting a high volume of targets. What have you made of the way he's played and competed so far?
He's competing every down. You know, that's Riley's DNA. Obviously, he's getting a high number of targets. We played 80 snaps. You know, he had 40+ passes. So Pat's on the one side, Riley's over there. So it's easy to kind of find Riley. But he's competitive. He's going to compete, you know, every single game. It's my job to take some pressure off Riley, you know, more often, and I will. And he's going to compete, you know, so no worries with Riley.
Does it change things kind of in terms of game planning with teams throwing in Pat's direction more often than last year?
Well, we're forcing it there. They have to do that, and if they don't do that, it's going to cut half the offense in half. That's the plan that we have on our side of the ball. So they have to throw the ball to Pat on occasion, obviously, and when they do, I expect Pat to make the plays. You know, he got a couple of targets last week. He got a bunch the week before, so we'll see. But that's the plan each week, to push the ball to Pat.
Vance, what do you appreciate the most about coaching Brandon Jones and what he brings to this defense?
Brandon is a fully engaged, you know, energetic playmaker. You know, he's the same every single day. You know, he can space. I mean, he gets the ball down for us. He finds the ball. He can cover. He can blitz. He's a complete player, but he's the same energy every single day.
Sean,
know that about him.
Sean said that it was the decision to put Dre on IR last week made it easier to say, okay, now he's got 4 weeks to focus, and is he going to be back this week? So does that make it a little easier? Not that you don't want to have him, but then also for guys like Justin specifically knowing, okay, I've got this for 4 weeks. I don't have to think, how's my starting job next week?
I think it's cleaner for Dre. You know, it gives him time to really focus on getting healthy. You know, for our perspective of it, Justin's ready to go. You know, our young guys are practicing hard every day. They're ready to go. So until Dre comes back, we're going to play with Justin. I mean, he's doing a good job, and it's a good deal for Dre to have a chance just to rehab and get himself totally healthy before he comes back.
So Riz,
yes.
I guess there's two teams. Is it maybe the Rams and the Panthers that are going to knuckleball kickoffs, and so their average return against is like 10 yards better than most of the teams?
Yeah.
Is that something that you can implement, or it's either the kicker can do that or they can't?
Yeah, so listen, we watch all the kickoffs from around the league. I would say this. I would say that there's more teams doing it than two. Those teams have had the most success. We actually talked about that as a group this morning with our guys. You know, I'm going to say that 50% of it is the good kickoffs by their kickers, and 50% of it is bad execution by the return teams. You know, we spend a lot of time, if you guys just look out here, just, you know, catching line drive balls, catching knuckleballs. The decision making by the returners, gosh, it's at least 50% of it. And so I know the Rams put the Eagles in some tough spots last week. I know Carolina's been good, you know, but I would say it's probably half and half, like I said. You know, decisions by the returners, fielding the ball by the returners, and some good kicks by their kickers. But there's actually more than a couple teams. You know, one interesting stat so far through today, there's been 16 kickoffs either short of the landing zone or out of bounds, kind of combined. You saw the one last night in the Cardinals game. And so there's a risk reward with hitting that knuckleball. It's really hard to control. And I think every kicker in the league probably works at it. You know, every kicker has their quote unquote, you know, people call them dirty ball, line drive, knuckleball, whatever you want to call it. But being able to control that, you know, and there's been a few teams that have come up short of the landing zone. And so, you know, that ball, it's really, really hard to control the flight of that ball. And so, you know, I think that's probably the stat that the fans don't know is that, man, yeah, it looks good when it works. But when it falls short of the landing zone like last night and you give the offense the ball to 40. So the risk reward there, I think you got to pick your spots situationally. But kudos to the Rams, kudos to the Panthers. They've done a great job through 3 games. Yeah.
As one of the designers of the kickoff rule, that moment last night when the Cardinals kind of have to make that decision, is that the kind of thing that you had in mind where you kind of forcing that sort of important choice there in that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look again through 3 weeks. I think the return rate's up over 78% now. To make the play relevant was really, not only to make the play more exciting and not only to make the play safer, which were the two main goals, but making the play more relevant. And now the decision making. When do you put the ball in play? When do you hit the touchback? And we've already seen some, marquee, some big time games that are in the spotlight. You saw that first week it was the Bears Vikings, right? This week it's the Cardinals Seahawks. With those decision making at the end of the game, in the national spotlight, it really. So yes, to answer your question, that is what we thought. Make the play more relevant, make it part of the decision making. In the old days with the old rules that we all grew up on, it was the squib kick, right? You saw the squib ball, and then a guy had to field it. The clock started. Similar to that, now making sure you get the ball in the landing zone. But we talked about this a few weeks ago. The placement and by the kicker, it just becomes really, really important. And you're seeing how it becomes paramount here in these big games here at the end, these one-score games.
Is your understanding continuing to evolve, or do you feel like 3-4 weeks in you got a really good understanding of how all of these things work, or are there tweaks that inevitably come up every week that kind of make you say, that's interesting?
Yeah, some teams played it last year like they are this year. Where I was, we put the ball in play a lot, so we kind of had a real good sample size on what was working, what wasn't working. Listen, you saw in that first week we had that end of the half situation against Tennessee where the ball broke out. That didn't work. And so I think our kickoff team has been a work in progress. We've been a lot better here the last couple of weeks. That's really what we aim to be these last 2 weeks. But there are a couple things every week that pop up. You're like, okay, that's a good scheme. This new formation that you can have this year with the kickoff return. Some other coaches, there's a lot of creative minds. And this is a copycat league. We talked about the knuckleball kickoffs. So, yeah, there's some nuances that, as the play, I looked at the stats today, there's 300 and plus more returns through 3 weeks than there were 2 years ago. Crazy, and so I think it's great for the fans. I think it's great for the game. But it definitely is a learning curve. There's a learning process for sure.
Darren, with 3 games under his belt, just how do you assess how Jeremy Crawshaw's performed with his punting, especially after some of the emphasis during preseason getting into this point?
Yeah, I think we've seen Jeremy kind of what we thought he was going to be, in training camp and OTAs. It was such a small sample size in those preseason games, and we were kind of working on some things. I think he's done a really good job of locating the ball down when we're near midfield, locating the ball down inside the 20. That's been a real strength of his. He's had some really good hang time punts. There's been a couple of locations that we haven't been too crazy about, but his hang time, ironically enough, the one return we gave up was actually a really good location kick. That wasn't on him. That was more on the coverage. And so, listen, like any rookie, there's going to be some peaks and valleys, any position, right? But I think he's starting to kind of get into a little bit of a groove. He's starting to get a little bit more consistent. I think these experiences for him are really, really important to go through it. But listen, I think we all know right from the beginning that if you watched him at any point, you knew the talent was there. It's a matter of bringing it to the game. And so at that position, probably more than most, kicker and punter, the consistency is the most important thing. So we just got to keep him kind of on par where he's been. But he's really helped our team through 3 games with the field position. The last couple of weeks, we've won the field position battle, and that's, I think it's one of the reasons we've been in these games. And so that's got to continue.
How much do you think the surprise punts in practice kind of helped kind of get him going on the right?
Yeah, listen, there's only so many ways you could create a game-like environment, and that's one of the ways we could do it for special teams. One and done, right? There's no second down on special teams. You got one shot. And so, I think for a young guy, to not go out and kick 12 or 15 punts in a row, and that kind of gets a little bit unrealistic, to put him under the spotlight. So I think the game condition thing is a good thing. I think it's really good mentally more than anything, right? He's on the side. He gets called out. He's got to perform in front of everybody. Now he's off. And so you don't really get a chance to get into a groove. So I think we've done a good job. Sean's done a great job of implementing that through these last 3 or 4 weeks.
And then when you have an offside after your defense, gets off the field, is it overemphasized this week? Just a quick reminder, like how do you go through to make sure?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a neutral zone infraction. We all know we can't, and ironically, it's a player, that Nick obviously does that for a living. He's on the edge all the time. Just a poor alignment thing. It's obviously, but it's an emphasis because we watch plays from around the league every week that are plays like that can really swing the field position or swing the momentum of the game. And I know Sean talked about that being a turnover. Anytime you have them in fourth down, whether it's a field goal or a punt, you want to make sure the next play is either you're ending up with the ball or you're kicking an extra point. And so that's really, really important. And so emphasis. I mean, we haven't been a highly penalized team, but the couple penalties that we have had have been crucial. So we got to make sure we're disciplined, like the other phases.